The neon lights of the spaceport flickered like dying stars, casting an eerie glow over the bustling marketplace. Captain Jaxon Reed adjusted his leather jacket, the one with a patched-up sleeve from that bar fight on Tau Ceti, and stepped into the diner. The sign above the door read, Galaxy's Edge Eatery, in glowing galactic standard. It was the kind of place that promised exotic flavors from across the cosmos, and Jaxon was starving. He slid into a booth, the synth leather seat creaking under his weight. A holographic menu floated in front of him, displaying dishes like Zorgalian flame steak and quasar noodle soup. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten anything but protein bars for the last 3 jumps, and he was ready to splurge. He tapped the menu, selecting the most expensive item. Deluxe Nebula Platter, a culinary journey through the stars, featuring rare ingredients from 5 systems. Serves 1. 500 credits. A robotic waiter rolled over, its single optic lens blinking. Order confirmed. Please wait while we prepare your meal. Jaxon leaned back, scrolling through his datapad. The diner was filled with the usual crowd. Traders haggling over cargo, spacers swapping war stories, and a few shady characters who looked like they'd stab you for a credit chip. He didn't pay much attention to them. He was too busy imagining the feast that was coming his way. 10 minutes later, the robot returned. But instead of a steaming platter of food, it was carrying a girl. Jaxon blinked. I think there's been a mistake. The girl was small, with pale blue skin and hair that shimmered like starlight. She wore a simple tunic and looked about as confused as Jaxon felt. The robot deposited her on the table with a mechanical clunk and rolled away. What the hell? Jaxon said, leaning closer. Are you part of the meal? The girl blinked large, luminescent eyes at him. I don't think so, she said in a soft, melodic voice. I was in a holding cell and then I was here. Jaxon groaned. Great. Just great. I order a gourmet meal and they serve me an alien girl. What kind of scam is this? The girl tilted her head. Are you my new owner? Owner? Well, I'm a freighter captain, not a slaver. Look, I don't know how you ended up here, but I'm gonna get this sorted out. He waved at the robot, which ignored him. The girl's eyes widened. Please don't send me back. They'll sell me to the Zorgalians. I've heard what they do to my kind. Jaxon hesitated. He wasn't exactly a hero, but he had a soft spot for underdogs. And this girl looked like the definition of an underdog. All right, fine. You can stick with me for now. But we're getting to the bottom of this. Her name was Lyra, and she was from a species called the Luminos. They were rare, prized for their ability to manipulate light and energy. Jaxon had heard rumors about them, how they were hunted and sold on the black market. But he'd never actually met one. As they left the diner, Lyra clung to his arm, her eyes darting nervously. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know why you're helping me, but thank you. Jaxon shrugged. Don't mention it. But if anyone asks, you're my, cargo. Got it. She nodded, and they made their way back to his ship, the Starblade. It wasn't much to look at. A beat-up freighter with more patches than original hull, but it was home. As they boarded, Jaxon's first mate, a grizzled old engineer named Rax, raised an eyebrow. Who's the kid? Rax asked, wiping grease off his hands. Long story, Jaxon said. Just keep an eye on her while I figure out what's going on. Rax grunted but didn't argue. He'd been with Jaxon long enough to know when to ask questions and when to keep his mouth shut. Over the next few days, Jaxon tried to unravel the mystery of how Lyra had ended up in his meal. He hacked into the diner systems, bribed a few informants, and even paid a visit to the local black market. What he discovered made his blood boil. The diner was a front for a trafficking ring. They smuggled rare species like the luminos and sold them to the highest bidder. Lyra had been captured on her homeworld and was being transported to a Zorgalian buyer when something went wrong. Instead of ending up in the hands of her captors, she'd been mistakenly delivered to Jaxon. "Well, that's just great," Jaxon muttered, pacing the Starblade's cramped cockpit. "Now we've got slavers and Zorgalians on our tail." Lyra looked up from the corner where she'd been quietly sitting. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Jaxon sighed. "It's not your fault. But we need to get you somewhere safe. Any idea where that might be?" She hesitated. "There's a colony. A hidden refuge for my people. But it's far from here." "Of course it is," Jaxon said, running a hand through his hair. "All right, buckle up. Looks like we're going on a little trip." The journey to the Luminos colony was anything but smooth. They were chased by Zorgalian bounty hunters, ambushed by pirates, and nearly blown up by a malfunctioning warp drive. But through it all, Lyra proved to be more than just a helpless victim. Her light manipulation abilities came in handy more than once, whether it was blinding their attackers or repairing damaged systems. Jaxon found himself growing fond of the kid. She was smart, resourceful, and had a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard. She reminded him of himself at that age, scrappy and determined to survive. Finally, after weeks of dodging danger, they reached the coordinates Lyra had provided. The colony was hidden in the heart of a nebula, its shimmering clouds masking the presence of the Luminos settlement. As they approached, a fleet of sleek, silver ships emerged to escort them. "Looks like your people are happy to see you," Jaxon said, glancing at Lyra. She smiled, her eyes glowing with gratitude. "Thank you, Jaxon. For everything." He shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Hey, it's what I do. Besides, you're not bad company for a stowaway." As they landed, a group of Luminos elders greeted them. Lyra was whisked away, leaving Jaxon and Rax to wait on the ship. After a while she returned, holding a small, glowing crystal. "This is for you," she said, handing it to Jaxon. "It's a Luminos starstone. It's a symbol of our gratitude. And it's also worth a fortune on the black market." Jaxon raised an eyebrow. "You're giving me a priceless artifact." She nodded. "You saved my life. It's the least I can do." He pocketed the crystal, a grin spreading across his face. "Well, I guess this trip wasn't a total loss after all." As they prepared to leave, Lyra hesitated. "Will I ever see you again?" Jaxon ruffled her hair, something he'd never admit to doing. "Who knows? The galaxy's a big place, kid. But if you ever need a ride, you know where to find me." She smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Take care, Jaxon." As the Starblade lifted off, Jaxon leaned back in his chair, the starstone glowing softly in his pocket. Rax glanced at him. "You know, for a guy who just wanted a gourmet meal, you sure ended up with a lot more." Jaxon chuckled. "Yeah, well, life's full of surprises. Let's just hope the next one doesn't involve alien girls or bounty hunters." But deep down, he knew he wouldn't trade the adventure for anything. After all, it wasn't every day you ordered a meal and got a story worth telling.